Hi, if you are a police officer or a caseworker or a doctor or a nurse or a social worker or maybe even just a volunteer or somebody who's going to be working with people who have been affected by trauma, then some of these tools might be really helpful for you in how to create some rapport with a trauma survivor. At first, it could be really intimidating because you don't want to do anything that's going to create any further suffering. Some of the clients that we work with here at Journey Out, they currently work in prostitution, but they may have had some severe trauma in their history. So they might have had childhood sexual abuse or childhood physical abuse or physical abuse at the hands of their pimp. They could have been raped, they could have been trafficked, they could have neglect in their background. So these things actually start to change the way your brain works. The amygdala in our brain starts to fire more readily when it feels threatened. Simple things can seem like a threat to a trauma survivor. Even just a simple gesture or tone of voice on your part might make somebody have a more adverse reaction than you might be used to. So what you can do is just start with having a neutral tone of voice. You don't want to be overly sympathetic or overly caring in your tone of voice, because if somebody had a pimp that was maybe trying to convince them to get into the work that they're doing, or if they had childhood sexual abuse, somebody might have had a tone of voice like that, and it could be really triggering for them. So just keep your tone of voice neutral. You might also want to feel like you want to hug somebody or touch them, stroke their shoulder, or just, rub their shoulder or something. It might be a nice gesture on your part, but you don't know if touch could be triggering for them. So it's best, again, just to be neutral. If they want to reach out to you, they can, but you don't want to approach anybody with touch. A good thing to do is to offer somebody choice, because when you've been affected by trauma, a lot of times choice was taken away from you. So you might say like, hey, would it feel good if you had a blanket around your shoulders while we talk? Because that oftentimes makes people feel safe. Or you can maybe offer them a cup of warm tea. So give them some choice to start off with. That's really helpful. And when you're first starting to talk with somebody, all of a sudden you might notice that some of your own personal trauma might be affected. If you have some historical trauma, all of a sudden it might start to come up just by hearing what they're talking about. So you might notice that your heart starts beating all of a sudden fast, or your hands are getting sweaty, or maybe you're just checking out a little bit, like you're not really present anymore. And what's happening is that your sympathetic nervous system is getting turned on, and the trauma is affecting you. So what you want to do then is just remember that you're in the here and now. This is the present. You're not in your old situation. So just start by reminding yourself of that. And then if you're starting to feel a lot of feelings, like the feelings are just hijacking you and you're not present anymore, just start by naming the feelings for yourself. So just ask yourself, what's going on? Am I really scared right now? Am I feeling nervous? Am I feeling like I'm not good enough to do this? I'm not capable, I'm not qualified. Maybe anger, like maybe some anger is coming up for you. So just name the emotion. And when you name it, you're not identifying so much with it, you're just disengaging from the emotion a little bit. And that's a helpful thing to do. You can also, if you're having some trouble, just like, how do I start some rapport with somebody? What do I do in the very beginning? You can just bring some humor into the room. It's always nice to do. You can make a joke about anything that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. So maybe the political environment or the weather or something that's just going to lessen your anxiety a little bit. It's going to lessen their anxiety, and it's going to make both of you kind of feel a little bit better. Having self-compassion is another tool that's really good. If you're feeling affected and you're feeling scared, remember to just have some compassion for yourself, because we're really good at having compassion for other people, but we don't do it a lot for ourselves. So you can do the simple gesture of just putting your hand over your heart, and just that gesture, it really brings your body right down. So just sit for a moment with your hand over your heart. You can also just take some deep breaths. So just doing and just the slow breath out is really going to bring your body right down. And what's also going to happen is that the person that you're talking to is going to regulate their breath in sync with your breath. So it's going to help them as well. And you can bring that into the session. You can say, hey, why don't we, take a couple of deep breaths together just to start us off so that we're both feeling a little bit more comfortable. It's a nice way to start. When you're starting to hear about somebody's trauma, sometimes they go into the details of the trauma. They go into like the really heavy duty details. You don't need to hear all of the details of somebody's trauma story, and they don't really need to tell you all of the details, because what happens is when they go through all the details, they are re-traumatizing themselves, and you don't want to do that. And also, you can start to experience some vicarious trauma. And what that means is that over the next several months or even several years, you're going to be reliving the details of that trauma story. So there's a lot of other healing modalities that are out there that people can, start to tell you about their trauma, but then you can go into another healing modality. And what that does is it protects you and it protects the person that you're working with as well. I would also encourage you just to bring your true self into the room. You don't have to feel like you're an expert or the expert or the professional or the person in charge. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to, when you start listening to somebody's story, to say, wow, that seems like a really intense experience for you. I don't even know what to say right now. That's okay, because that's human. And you can just sort of lean into your intention of wanting to be there, wanting to help, and knowing that by being there, by showing up, that's healing. And healing really happens in connection with one another. Bringing something that's relatable is also really good to do when you're working with somebody. So perhaps they're telling you a story about being raped, and you've never been raped, and it's a horrible story and you can't identify with that, but maybe you can remember a time where something happened and you felt violated in your life, and you can bring that to the table, and it can help you start to sort of access the connection that you want to make with them. And if you are a person who's one of those like helping personalities, and you just feel like you want to do more and more and more to make it better for them, and it's a wonderful thing to do, and you want to just keep assisting them, but you want to remember that you're not there to take away their experience. You really want to relieve yourself of that pressure of feeling like you need to, make everything better for them, because you can't make it better. But what you can do is you can provide services, you can provide care, and that is in fact very healing.